All right. Welcome back, everyone, uh, to the Eli and Friends cast, with Eli and
Oh,
Friends.
it's your
Friends
boy,
with
Uh,
weird
we
names.
and
This
it's your
is
boy
Clinton's
Clinton.
first episode.
Huh?
This is my first time in like a couple years on this channel.
Ah,
I don't, I don't remember the last
o-
time
o-
we recorded together.
Yeah.
well, introduce yourself. Say a couple words about yourself, would you kindly?
My name's Clint. There you
Marvelous.
go. Not much else to say.
You like long walks on beaches?
I don't.
Oh,
I don't. I don't like beaches that much. I prefer like forests and whatever.
oh.
I prefer hiking.
Well, let them know what we're about to talk about, Lewis.
So
Okay.
stuffed.
Uh, in the annals of history, there are conflicts that capture the imagination. And then there's the Great Emu War. Uh, this is something of a unique and comical military conflict that took place in Australia in 1932 when the nation found itself facing an unusual adversary, uh, a large population of emus.
Yeah. So we're just gonna start off with how it begun, the conflict in that ensued, and the aftermath. So I knew about the Great Emu War for a while now. I know it after World War One, Australia gave some of their soldiers some land to crop in, and at first they was cropping and they couldn't. It was during the Great Depression as well, so
Well, when they started it, the soldiers came back from World War One.
yeah.
I think a lot of their jobs were taken by other people by this point.
Hmm.
So the government gave them a bunch of land out in the Western Australia where there wasn't a lot going on,
Yeah,
and just basically said, uh, grow, grow stuff, have fun. And
Pretty
for a
much.
while that was fine, up until the Great Depression in 1929.
Yeah. I didn't. They was telling them to grow more.
Grow more will pay you less for the more you grow.
And then the government offered them something. I forgot exactly what they offered.
Subsidy. They
Yeah,
offered them like
subsidy.
subsidies, but they didn't cover the cost. So by 1932, the farmers are like, "Hey,
We're ready.
we're poor. We want some money for this wheat, and you're not paying us enough."
And
The
when they
government
thought
basically
things
told
couldn't
them
get
to
worse,
the government basically told them to get stuffed. So the farmers decided they're not gonna. I've seen like they either like harvested it, but didn't sell it, or they just didn't harvest it at all, which I think is the latter.
right when they thought things couldn't get worse, they came.
Who came?
The emus.
Dun dun dun.
so
Da-da.
let's talk about emus for a second here. They are
Scary.
actually the second largest living bird and the largest living bird found in Australia. So they grow about an average of 5.7 feet. Males weigh anywhere from 110 to 121 pounds, um, with the females weighing slightly more. Uh, and these things can run at around 31 miles per hour. So
Good lord.
let's compare
That's
that to
insane.
Usain Bolt's average running speed for 100 meters in almost 10 seconds is, sorry, just 23 miles per hour. So safe to say, you're not outrunning these guys. And Eli, if you would so kindly put up a picture of these things' claws. They have claws
Hmm.
as sharp as knives. So, when they catch up to you after you fail at running because you've never ran a day in your life, you're gonna be getting gutted like a fish. the whole time, and it's gonna suck the whole time. So
Oh,
imagine 20,000 of these things migrating from the coastal regions to inland regions every single year for breeding, uh, encountering these new farms, right? So the
mhm.
farmers obviously were very unhappy that these killing machines were um, just having their way with their crops. And of course, the emus were messing up their fences, which allowed other pests to get through and also destroy their crops. I think the main problem was rabbits.
Yeah, a lot of rabbits.
Yeah,
A
that's what
lot
I
of
read too.
rabbits.
A lot of rabbits.
Yeah, so I mean, farming was already very, very hard before all this started happening. So you can imagine the frustration of the government and the farmers.
And then when the farmers had just a bunch of emus knocking at the door asking for food, they went to the one. They couldn't trust the government at this point because the government was just basically proving over and over again that they didn't care about them. So they went to the one thing they knew they could trust, the military.
Yeah, that was when the story got weird. They decided to go to the military instead.
I mean, they were soldiers, so
Yeah.
what do you trust? A gun.
So then they
What's the
went to
best
the
way to get rid
military
of a
to ask
lot
for
of
help.
things? Guns. Kills a lot. But it didn't quite turn out the way they hoped.
Because they asked for help, then the military decided to send their own people to help them. The Royal Australian Artillery soldiers. And it was armed with Lewis guns.
Only two of them. They only sent 3 people and 2 Lewis guns. So,
Hmm.
and these things are these Lewis guns are huge, by the way.
Yeah, what you care to explain to the audience what a Lewis gun is?
It's a machine gun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a light machine gun. So you can imagine already how big they are. They even have like they even have a bipod because they're so huge. You need it, or else you're just going all over the place. They were started. They've been manufactured since 1911. They've been in service a while, and by that point, even by that point, they were in service for 20 years. And they're huge. They can fire a lot of rounds downrange really fast. I'm struggling here. I don't know a lot about guns.
Guns are my favorite thing to talk about.
Then you talk about it.
I'm joking. Guns killed my whole family.
Do you have a okay?
Anywho, so yeah, the military got involved. And they brought the Royal Australian Artillery to come in and try to, you know, fix the emu problem. But that didn't go as planned because emus, they take a lot of bullets, more than they
Kind of
expected.
bulletproof. They took like what, like 10 bullets per emu to put them down.
Yeah,
Not to mention, they tend to gather up in groups and disperse in random directions. So keeping your sights on like, one of them was very hard.
yeah, they thought it was gonna be way easier than they thought, but then they all split up, took way more bullets than they expected. I didn't rumors say like each group that dispersed, they had like their own little generals, and like those birds was the ones to keep watch.
That's hilarious. Well, since that didn't work, they adapted their strategy and started putting the machine guns on trucks. But even with that mobility, the emus continued to prove some incredibly challenging targets. So the emus, with their numbers and their wily tactics, appeared to outmaneuver the human soldiers. Um, so again, they scattered in groups, which, it made it hard to, what's the word? Eliminate them. Um, so, a bunch of failed sorties, you could say. The
A
government
few times their
ended up,
gun jammed.
yeah, the guns jammed. It was just like, this whole war was just a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah, because they wrecked the vehicle as well, didn't they? They went into a fence.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I
because I
wouldn't
think
doubt it.
they hit one of the emus and they wrecked into the fence.
Yeah,
Probably the
only
most
12
effective way of
birds.
killing them.
They only killed 12 birds before the gun jammed.
At
And
least they
by
like
and in like a week period, or like 6 days, they only killed like maybe like 200 or 300 of them, and they used over a quarter of their ammunition already.
Yeah, 2,500 rounds of ammo.
that's
They
So,
had
insane.
10,000.
and they only had like 300 dead birds to show for it.
Yeah.
So and after and on the and they started on the 2nd of December, of November,
Yeah,
sorry,
November.
1932. They went on till the 8th, and they were like, "Screw this, we're leaving." But then they returned by the 13th because the farmers said we're still having problems, and y'all didn't solve the problem, like you said. And then that actually saw more success. Around 986 emus were killed between November 13th and December 10th. So a month-long period, they killed around 1,000 emus and then injured about 2,500 more. I think the guy in charge argued that those injured emus died later, but I don't think you can accurately tell if that's what happened or if they just got better.
Yeah, that's unclear.
Can't exactly ask the emus if a lot of them died from blood loss.
It's funny because the Minister for Defense, George Pierce, he thought it would be good PR.
It was
You
not.
know, he couldn't just give machine guns to random people or, random civilians. Uh, but you see, well, he couldn't just send out soldiers to do it. So he just did it. He was actually pretty interested in getting rid of the emus, obviously, as the government was. He even sent out a camera crew with the soldiers to film the Great War, and he thought that it would be a chance to show the voters out in the country, he thought it'd be a good way to vote, sorry, to win the rural vote, and show them that he cared about their problem and all that. That he was gonna destroy the emus and save the farmers, and he'd be a hero, and he would have that vote. Um, and he really tried to make this thing his legacy. He said he justified it, and he said he was like, oh, he told the soldiers it'd be good target practice, and
Yeah.
he told them to bring back 100 emu skins, and he said he'd put their feathers in the light horsemen's hats. Um,
Back when war had horsemen,
yeah,
cavalry,
yeah,
which
uh,
about a decade later was no longer a thing.
right. And he had a feeling that it could go wrong. He was ready for that backlash. So I mean, he did make the farmers foot the bill, and he made them sign an agreement to the state. Uh, and that contract made it clear, right? If things went south, Pierce was not going to take any responsibility for what happened. And of course, nobody remembers Pierce's name whenever um this whole thing comes up. It's usually just silly Australians.
I always hear about the major in charge, Major Meredith.
Meredith,
They
yeah,
always say his name, but they don't mention Pierce, George Pierce, who was the Minister of
exactly,
Defense, even though he was the one that signed off on it. He made the
ex
farmers give them food, accommodate them, and then pay for the ammunition. But George Pierce, no one talks about him, even though he's primarily the one responsible for this war.
and he made the farmers pay for it too.
Yeah, he was the one primarily responsible, but he doesn't get attached to it. You always hear about the soldiers who were in charge, or soldiers who, I guess, in charge of this war. If you can call it a war.
I mean, it's quite
That's
embarrassing. I wouldn't want to
debatable.
be tagged in it.
That's debatable. I mean, the people in the cities didn't necessarily like it either. I mean, they actually protested pretty hard. Um, Senator James Guthrie was actually kind of at the forefront of the anti-emu war movement, which was actually coined by the press. He said it was, quote, unnecessary cruelty. And he said that if they really did have to go, then it had to be through, quote, more humane, if less spectacular methods, quote. Um, but Pierce, of course, started barking back, right? And he told Guthrie, quote, it is no more cruel to kill the bird with machine guns than with rifles, quote. But of course, the people weren't, you know, convinced, right? Um, so papers started, being filled with think pieces, and they were calling it um, mass slaughter, and they were saying they started kind of rebranding the emu as the great Australian bird, you
Yeah.
know. But with or without the support of the people in the cities, the Great Emu War, marched forward.
Apparently, they wanted to use grenades and explosions on the emus, but that wasn't approved.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a little overkill right there.
That would have been awesome though.
But I mean, overall, during the main emu war, they used over 10,000 rounds, and they took around like almost 1,000 emus out of the 20,000 emus. So it's really a big fail.
And they injured about 2,500 more. It
Yeah,
was a fail, but it was also kind of successful because it made the emus like it actually saved some of the wheat crops, which was the
yeah,
main thing. They didn't want the wheat crops to, be eaten. It's actually saved a fair amount of it. Not all of it, of
they
course,
created
but
they created super emus.
yeah. They don't want to talk about the people that died during the emu war. They don't want to know the real truth. And we're about to tell you the real truth. Don't believe the government.
we have
They're
pictures of the
gonna
war crimes the emus committed.
You're gonna get the channel shut down. I'm all the way down here in your basement in your freaking server room, dude.
Emu War 2 is going to happen. They don't want to know the truth.
Emus are
No,
biding their times in caves down in the Australian outback. They were
no.
just waiting.
But
What would
later
you
on, they
guys?
decided to put a bounty. So after the war, they just
Oh,
decided, okay, we need to figure out another solution. So they decided to put a bounty on the emus.
Which was way more successful.
Yeah, way more successful
In a
afterwards.
in a 6 month period.
no, no. But
Like
see, hold on, hold on, hold on. See, all that was after everybody started to see, like more and more people started to see that it was a terrible, stupid idea, including Mr. George Pierce. The newspapers were reporting, the truth, right? That barely any freaking emus had been killed.
Yeah.
they even showed the footage in theaters, right? And it got laughed out of theaters pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
There was one newspaper, Perth's Daily News. They made a joke and they said, when he gave the order to stop, that they made the joke that no treaty of peace has been concluded, and the emus remain in possession of disputed territory. So the militia barely made a dent, in 10,000 emus. And now they were
20,000.
going home, and the settlers, right, these farmers were stuck with that bill.
Yep.
And then, because I think we were on November 8th, when you just mentioned, no, around November 12th, they went back to the military. I was like, hey, can we get more help? We're still having problems. And I think this time, was it the prime minister or something? Said he helped this time, or
We already
maybe I'm
talked
wrong.
about that.
Well, Lewis went back and
Oh,
talked about George Pierce around November 8th, walking back his statements.
true.
And then around like November 13th or 12th, sorry, they asked for the military's help again, and they got it. And Major Meredith came back, and this time they were more successful, but they only killed like 1,000 emus.
It was during the
Yeah,
bounties where the success really came after.
it was so stupid.
The bounty numbers dwarfed the numbers by the official military.
Yeah, the bounty numbers was huge.
You could call that part two, right? The second Emu War,
Electric Boogaloo.
I
Electric
mean,
Boogaloo.
you could call it a war or a hunt, I guess.
The the bounties was a massacre.
Yeah, but that was a massacre. The bounties was 57,000 bounties were claimed in 6 months in the period in 1934.
It took them a month to get 1,000 kills. It took the farmers 6 months to get 57,000. That is just an
Now,
insane
see,
number.
when I was doing my research, I came across, this aforementioned Second Great Emu War, before the bounties, and I found out that they did actually kind of have a part two, right? So November 11th, George Pierce, our boy, he actually reproves it, and he goes, quote, "Such strong representations have been made to me that I have approved of the machine gun party returning to the wheat belt to destroy thousands of emus which are causing tremendous damage to crops." And just like that, right? The fucking war was back on. Um, they learned from their mistakes this time, though. So on the first day alone, they took out 300 of them. And I mean, honestly, I feel like that was more than they killed the first time, altogether.
Probably.
Right. So, I mean, as the fighting dragged on, right, the emus were starting to be a little more careful, but the militia, they still managed to they managed to bag about, I want to say, an average of 100 emus per week. And it was actually going so well that that other farmers were starting to beg the militia for help. Um, People in other areas were uh, calling George Lambert, who he was the Labor Party secretary, and he was sent a letter by a farmer, and his involvement is a whole other thing. Um, but this guy was involved, and hold on. Right, okay, so people were calling this George Lambert guy, and they were telling him that they had their own fucking emu problems, because of course there were a boatload of these things everywhere, and they wanted Meredith and his men specifically, you know. So by the time that they came home, they'd killed, there are estimates, I mean, don't quote me on anything, but anywhere from 3,200 to 3,500 emus, but by then, of course, the papers had run out of emu jokes and nobody really cared anymore. So by the end of that, one single paper ended up reporting at the end of the campaign, and that was buried in the country news sections, and it said, quote, "Farmers now breathe again. The emus were too scared to go anywhere near the farms, and the crops were thriving. Major Meredith and his gun crew are to be congratulated." And that was that. So moving on to the bounties, I guess, right?
Yeah, because this second war kind of was way more successful than the first, because the first one lasted for a month, a week, and 1 day, and they killed 986 emus, but they wounded 2,500.
But nobody ever hears about that, though, you know. I
Yeah,
really just thought that the Australian people just lost outright. I
yeah,
never knew that they came back with, to get their lick back.
yeah, because no one, everyone likes failure. They don't want to talk about the lick back.
Exactly.
But yeah, then the bounties happened, and that was way more successful. But eventually, they decided to do what most people would do. They just build better fences around their
Yeah.
farms. Yeah, that might
And
have been better decision to begin with.
and the bounties continued for I think a few decades, and they got a couple 100,000 killed, but the emus are still fine. Their population is still perfectly fine after all that.
Apparently, in 1950s, they raised the issues of emus again, and they approved of 500,000 rounds of ammunition.
How much?
500,000 rounds,
Oh my God.
500,000.
So give them
Yep,
tanks at that point.
the minister approved it.
Just give them artillery. Come
But
on.
I think now it's illegal to kill emus.
It's the national bird of Australia now.
Yeah. So they was like, you know what? We're gonna make a reason why they can't kill us. We're gonna become the national bird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, then there's surprisingly there's not as many memes that you might think of something like this. There is a Emu War video game on Steam. There's a couple Emu War short films. I saw a short film earlier today about that. I think they have a trailer for a new short film of the Emu War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so seems like some people are making uh some fan films about it and stuff like that, but it's not as like popular as I thought it would be as like a giant meme, you know?
Right.
Like it's
I've
like
only
one of
ever
those
heard
things
it
you
as
have
like
to
an
know.
offhand thing.
Hmm?
I've only ever heard it as like an offhand joke.
Yeah,
Like,
that's one
haha,
of those things
Australia
you have to
lost.
really, really know to know about it. Like you like a emu war. What? What is this about?
I was like, oh, they lost the war? Haha, Australia sucks. And it's like, well, it's not that it's not like that cut dry, you know?
Yeah, but they went to wars with emus. And the emus came out on top. Now they're the national bird.
The emus took over Australia.
Emus they're crazy, man.
Yeah, the emus, I feel like
I
they
could,
kind of won this war.
I could take them in a fight.
Any closing thoughts? Any more things you want to say?
I just think it's hilarious. It was such a funny, just like such a random thing to happen, you know?
I'm just surprised the emus are as tanky as they are. I believe, I don't think it was Major Meredith or whatever, made a comment saying they should have just give the guns to the emus. They'd be basically tanks during the next
Yeah,
war.
yeah. He did, yeah, he said something like that.
If
Which I would be
Australia get in a war with us, they're bringing the emus.
we'd lose. Yeah, you have to nuke them just to do anything to them.
And yeah, I think that's it for us for our first time being back. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like. We'll work on improving stuff. And we're going to try to keep on with this little podcast, bring some more stuff. We got a lot of things we're thinking about to like plan. The next one I'm thinking about is this uh thing called Action Park, this amusement park.
Oh,
Action
The 60s
Park,
behind
let's
it.
go.
I know that.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
Johnny
down.
Knoxville made a movie about it.
I'm down.
So yeah, that might be the next one because it seems very interesting. They had a body slide that had a loop-de-loop, which
No, I'm
yeah,
good.
What do you mean by body slide? Do you mean dead bodies or living bodies?
no, like a body slide, like you slide down
Because
your body.
I've heard of a lot of bad things happening at action parks. So I could believe like they have a
I
dead
mean,
body.
6 people died, so
They just have a slide for the dead
3 people
bodies.
died in the wave pool alone. But you'll learn more about that next time. But for right
In
now,
3 years.
for right now, I guess like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time.
Hit that bell.
Keep that bell notification, baby.
Hit that bell. Hit
Yes.
that bell.
Slap that bell.
So yeah, remembering the Great Emu War. Peace out.